Donald Corrin slammed his office door so hard, the glass walls of his executive suite shook. The sharp sound echoed through the headquarters of Corrin Residential Investments in downtown Denver. Conversations stopped. Keyboards went silent. Employees looked up from their desks, exchanging uneasy glances. People who had worked for Donald for more than a decade had seen him negotiate impossible deals, survive market crashes, and calmly handle lawsuits worth millions of dollars. None of them had ever seen him look afraid. He stood behind his desk, gripping his phone so tightly that his knuckles turned white. "This has to be a mistake," he muttered. His banking app remained open on the screen. Transaction declined. He frowned and selected another account. Again. Transaction declined. A third attempt. The same message. His heartbeat accelerated. Only an hour earlier he had walked out of a meeting expecting to finalize the purchase of a commercial property that would expand his company across 3 western states. Investors had congratulated him before the contracts were even signed. His future looked secure. Now everything seemed to be collapsing within minutes. His office phone rang. He grabbed it immediately. "This is Donald." His chief financial officer didn't waste time. "Donald, several outgoing wire transfers have been rejected." "What? The banks aren't processing them? That doesn't make sense." "I know." Donald ended the call before another one appeared. His property acquisitions manager. "We've got a problem." "What now?" "The title company says today's closing is suspended." "Suspended?" "They received legal instructions not to release any funds." Donald closed his eyes for a second. "No, that's impossible." Before he could ask another question, another call came through. One of the company's oldest investors. "Donald, my distribution payment didn't arrive this morning." "I'm looking into it." "I hope you are. My accountant says your accounts may have been restricted." "They're mistaken." "I hope so." The line went dead. Donald stared at the phone. His assistant appeared cautiously in the doorway. "You asked me to contact First Mountain Bank." "What did they say?" She hesitated. "They wouldn't discuss your accounts with me. They know who you are." "I told them." "So?" "They said their legal department instructed them not to release any information except through your attorney." Donald slowly stood. "What attorney?" I don't know, sir." For the first time since founding the company, he felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, not frustration, uncertainty. His success had always given him options. If one lender refused a deal, another accepted it. If one project failed, 3 more replaced it. Money had solved nearly every obstacle he faced as an adult. Today, it wasn't solving anything. His assistant spoke again. "Your attorney is downstairs. Send him up." Less than 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened. Martin Hale stepped into the executive floor, carrying several thick legal binders under one arm. He had represented Donald through acquisitions, contract disputes, and complicated negotiations for nearly 15 years. Today, he looked unusually serious. Donald met him before he reached the office. "What happened?" "Let's go inside." "No. I want an answer now." Martin looked around at the employees pretending not to listen. "We should talk privately." Donald nodded once. The office door closed behind them. Martin carefully placed the binders on the conference table instead of Donald's desk. He removed one large envelope. "You were officially served this morning." Donald frowned. "Served with what?" Martin slid the envelope toward him. Donald tore it open. The first page carried the seal of the Denver District Court. His eyes moved quickly across the heading. Emergency financial injunction. The next page. Temporary asset preservation order. Another. Court-authorized financial freeze. His breathing slowed. Not because he was calm. Because his mind was trying to understand what he was reading. He continued turning pages. Business operating accounts. Investment portfolios. Commercial properties. Corporate distributions. Personal accounts connected to marital assets. Pending property transfers. Everything had been placed under immediate court supervision. Nothing of significant value could be sold, transferred, refinanced, or withdrawn without court approval. Donald finally reached the signature page. His eyes stopped. He read the name once, then again. His lips moved, almost silently. Christine Wilson Corin. A short laugh escaped him. It wasn't confidence, it was disbelief. My wife didn't do this. Martin said nothing. Donald looked up. Tell me somebody forged these papers. They're legitimate. No. Donald. No. He pushed the documents away, as though touching them longer might somehow make them real. My wife wouldn't freeze our accounts. Martin spoke carefully. She requested emergency protection of marital assets. Donald stared at him. For what reason? Martin opened another folder. The court reviewed evidence suggesting marital funds may have been diverted over several years. The room became completely quiet. Donald slowly lowered himself into his chair. His face lost its color. Outside his office, employees continued working, unaware that the empire they believed was stronger than ever had just entered the most dangerous day in its history. Across the city, Christine Wilson sat quietly inside another office. A cup of coffee rested untouched beside her. It had gone cold long ago. She wrapped both hands around the cup anyway, not because she wanted to drink it, but because it gave her something steady to hold. The hardest conversation of her life had already happened months earlier. Today wasn't about revenge. Today was about finally telling the truth. Martin didn't speak again until Donald finally looked up from the court papers. I know you have questions, he said quietly. But before you ask them, there's something else you need to understand. Donald rubbed both hands across his face. What could possibly be worse than this? Martin opened another binder. This wasn't based on assumptions. Donald frowned. What are you talking about? The judge approved these emergency orders because your wife's legal team submitted extensive financial documentation. Donald leaned forward. What documentation? Travel records. Donald said nothing. Corporate expense reports. His jaw tightened. Bank transfers. He swallowed. Property records. Still silent. And accounting documents that cover several years. Donald suddenly stood. No. He paced toward the windows overlooking downtown Denver. This is ridiculous. He turned back toward Martin. Christine doesn't know enough about the business to put something like this together. Martin looked at him without speaking. Donald stopped walking. His expression slowly changed. He remembered something. Long before Corin Residential Investments had become one of Denver's fastest-growing development companies, Christine had built every accounting process they used. She had created the budgeting system. She had organized payroll. She had written many of the financial procedures employees still followed. Every approval process, every reporting system, every audit file. She knew where everything was because she had created the structure herself. Donald lowered his eyes. For the first time that morning, another feeling replaced confusion. Concern, Martin quietly continued. She didn't file this because she was angry. Donald looked up sharply. Don't tell me why my wife filed for divorce. I'm not. I'm telling you why the court listened. Martin gently pushed another folder toward him. This contains only a portion of what her attorney submitted. Donald opened it. The first document listed executive travel, Las Vegas, Las Vegas, Las Vegas, weekend after weekend. The next page contained expense reimbursements, luxury accommodations, entertainment expenses, executive hospitality, client development. Another page, corporate credit card statements, another, wire transfers between companies Donald had personally approved. His breathing became heavier. None of these papers surprised him. He recognized every transaction. What shocked him was seeing years of decisions gathered into one place. Separated, each expense had looked ordinary. Together, they told a completely different story. Martin finally asked the question Donald had been avoiding. Is there anything in these records that isn't accurate? Donald stared at the pages. Several long seconds passed. He closed the folder. I need to talk to Christine. Martin slowly shook his head. I wouldn't advise that today. She's my wife. She's also the opposing party in an active legal case. Donald slammed his palm against the conference table. This isn't supposed to happen. No one plans for this. She could have talked to me. Martin answered carefully. She believes she tried. Those words landed harder than everything else. Donald remembered the nights Christine had asked him if everything was all right. The weekends she wondered why business trips kept getting longer. The quiet dinners where she searched his face, hoping for the husband she once knew. Every time, he had another explanation, another promise, another excuse. Martin gathered the remaining papers. You need to prepare yourself. For what? The financial review has only started. Donald stared toward the floor. Outside, another notification appeared on his phone. His luxury vehicle financing company. Your scheduled payment could not be processed. Another alert followed. A title company. Closing postponed, pending court authorization. Another, one of his private investment managers requesting an immediate meeting. Donald set the phone face down. His entire career had been built on confidence. Today, confidence had disappeared. Across town, Christine sat across from her attorney, Miles Farrow. The conference room was quiet, except for the soft turning of paper. Miles closed the final binder and folded his hands. Donald should have received everything by now. Christine gave a small nod. I know. You still have time to stop this. She looked at him. No. I have time to change my mind. Miles didn't interrupt. Christine looked through the office window toward the Denver skyline. I changed my mind months ago. Her voice remained calm. The paperwork simply caught up. Miles had represented hundreds of clients during his career. Many arrived filled with anger. Others wanted revenge. Some wanted to humiliate the person who had hurt them. Christine wanted none of those things. She hadn't smiled once during their months of preparation. She hadn't celebrated a single discovery. Every new document had broken her heart a little more. The affair wasn't the only betrayal. The money wasn't the only betrayal. It was the realization that the man she trusted most had slowly become someone she no longer recognized. Miles spoke gently. When people hear about this case, many will assume it's about a husband who cheated. Christine slowly shook her head. No, it's much bigger than that. She reached into her briefcase and removed a small notebook with worn edges. Miles recognized it immediately. She had brought it to every meeting. Christine carefully opened it. Inside were handwritten pages filled with hopes from years earlier. Baby names, nursery ideas, letters addressed to the child she and Donald never had the chance to raise. She rested her hand on the open page. This, she whispered, is where everything changed. Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't let them fall. The affair didn't destroy my marriage. She closed the notebook. It destroyed what was left after we stopped grieving together. Miles remained silent. Some pain didn't need advice. It only needed to be acknowledged. Christine carefully returned the notebook to her bag. She looked at the stack of financial evidence waiting beside her. Years of airline records, hotel invoices, corporate reimbursements, hidden transfers, business filings. Every page represented a choice Donald had made. She had spent months organizing those records, not because she wanted to punish him, because she refused to allow the truth to be buried beneath excuses. She took one slow breath. I'm ready. Miles nodded. So am I. Christine stood, picked up her coat, and walked toward the conference room door. She wasn't walking into a fight. She was walking toward the end of a chapter she had spent years trying to save. Welcome to Will and Rye's Stories. To every single person listening right now, thank you for being here. This channel is growing because of people like you who truly love meaningful, relatable, and unforgettable storytelling. Please support the channel by subscribing. Now, let's go back nearly 10 years, to a time when Donald Corrin wasn't known as one of Denver's successful real estate developers, and Christine Wilson believed she had found the one man she could trust with her heart, her future, and the family they dreamed of building together. Almost 10 years before Donald Corrin watched his fortune disappear behind court orders, he was just another young man trying to build a future. He wasn't rich. He didn't own luxury buildings. He didn't have investors waiting outside his office. He had one old pickup truck, a small apartment in Colorado Springs, and a dream that refused to leave him. Ever since he was a teenager, Donald had admired the people who built neighborhoods instead of simply living in them. Whenever new houses went up across town, He slowed his car to watch the crews at work. He wasn't interested in swinging a hammer. He wanted to own the projects. After graduating from college, he accepted a job selling real estate. The work was harder than he expected. Some days, he spent hours calling people who immediately hung up. Other days, he knocked on doors, only to hear another rejection. His commissions came slowly. More than once he wondered whether he had chosen the wrong career. Still, every setback pushed him to work harder. He arrived before everyone else. He stayed after everyone had gone home. He attended every business breakfast, every networking event, and every community meeting where he might meet someone willing to give him a chance. Donald believed success belonged to people who refused to quit. Across Denver, Christine Wilson lived by a different dream. She wasn't chasing wealth. She wanted stability. She believed a good life came from honesty, hard work, and keeping promises. She grew up in a close black family where everyone looked after one another. Sunday afternoons always ended around the same dinner table. Her mother worked for Denver Public Schools. Her father repaired city buses for the Regional Transportation District. Neither earned a large paycheck, but every bill was paid on time. Every promise was kept. Christine learned those lessons long before she entered college. If someone trusted you, you protected that trust. If you made a mistake, you admitted it. If life became difficult, you faced it instead of running away. Those values stayed with her. After earning her finance degree, Christine accepted a position with a respected accounting firm in Denver. She enjoyed solving financial problems. Numbers made sense to her. A balance sheet either worked or it didn't. There was no room for excuses. Clients appreciated the way she explained complicated reports in simple language. Her coworkers respected how calm she remained under pressure. She never chased attention. She simply wanted to do her job well. One spring morning, the Denver Young Professionals Association hosted a networking breakfast for entrepreneurs, accountants, bankers, and small business owners, hoping to build new connections. Christine attended because one of her clients had invited her. Donald attended because he hoped to find someone willing to finance his first renovation project. Near the end of the event, several guests were invited to present business ideas. Donald stood confidently at the front of the room. He explained his plan to purchase an aging duplex, renovate it, and sell it for a profit. People listened with interest. The idea sounded promising. Then Donald displayed his financial projections. Christine immediately noticed several problems. The renovation costs were far too low. Permit expenses were missing. Insurance estimates were incomplete. The expected profit depended on numbers that didn't add up. When the presentation ended, the moderator invited questions. Christine politely raised her hand. "May I ask about your renovation budget?" Donald smiled. "Of course. I think several costs may have been underestimated." The room became quiet. Christine didn't speak to embarrass him. She simply explained where the missing expenses would likely appear. Donald listened carefully. He looked back at his spreadsheet. Then he nodded. "I believe you're right." Instead of defending weak numbers, he admitted the mistake. Several people in the audience noticed his honesty. After the meeting ended, Donald walked toward Christine. "I appreciate what you pointed out. I wasn't trying to criticize you." "I know," she smiled. "I just didn't want you walking into a lender's office with projections they would reject." Donald laughed. "Looks like you saved me from embarrassing myself." Christine smiled. "I may have saved you a loan rejection." Donald extended his hand. "I'm Donald." "Christine." For the next few minutes they talked about real estate, finance, and the challenges of starting a business. Donald admitted he understood construction much better than accounting. Christine admitted she enjoyed helping businesses become financially stronger. Before leaving, Donald asked a simple question. "Would you be willing to look over the numbers with me?" Christine considered it for a moment. "I can spare a few evenings after work. I'd really appreciate that." Over the next several weeks, they met inside a quiet study room at the Denver Public Library. Donald brought blueprints. Christine brought spreadsheets. She corrected loan projections. She adjusted renovation budgets. She explained lender requirements. Donald carefully revised every figure. Neither complained about the long evenings. Both believed they were working towards something meaningful. When the revised proposal was finally submitted, the bank approved Donald's first renovation loan. He couldn't stop smiling. A few days later, he called Christine. "I owe you dinner." "You don't owe me anything." "I disagree. You helped make this happen." Christine laughed. "Fine, but somewhere simple." That evening, they shared pizza at a small neighborhood restaurant. After dinner, they walked through downtown Denver, talking about family, childhood memories, future goals, and the kind of life each hoped to build. Neither tried to impress the other. Neither pretended to be someone they weren't. Donald admired Christine's honesty. Christine admired Donald's determination. Without realizing it, two ordinary dreams had just begun moving in the same direction. Donald and Christine's relationship grew naturally. There were no expensive vacations, no luxury gifts, no dramatic proposals after only a few weeks. They spent time getting to know each other. Donald met Christine's parents during a Sunday family dinner. He quickly realized why Christine valued honesty so deeply. Her family welcomed him warmly, but they also believed trust had to be earned. Her father looked him in the eye and said, "Success is good. Character is better." Donald never forgot those words. A few weeks later, Christine met Donald's parents in Colorado Springs. They immediately noticed how comfortable their son seemed around her. Donald smiled more. He worried less. For the first time in years, his future wasn't only about business. It was about building a family. Over the next 2 years, their relationship became stronger. They attended neighborhood festivals during the summer. They hiked together in the Rocky Mountains on weekends. They volunteered at community food drives before Thanksgiving. When football season arrived, they invited friends into their small apartment to watch games together. Life wasn't exciting every day. It was steady. Both of them liked it that way. One evening, Donald asked Christine to meet him at Washington Park. As they walked beside the lake, he reached into his jacket pocket. He wasn't surrounded by photographers. There wasn't a crowd watching. He simply stopped walking. "Christine," she smiled. "What is it?" He took a small ring box from his pocket. "I've spent my whole life chasing success." He looked into her eyes. "But none of it means anything if I don't get to build that future with you." He opened the box. "Will you marry me?" Christine covered her mouth as tears filled her eyes. "Yes." Donald slipped the ring onto her finger. They hugged each other while families walked past, without realizing they had just witnessed one of the happiest moments of two ordinary lives. They married several months later in a small church surrounded by relatives and close friends. Their honeymoon lasted only 4 days. Donald didn't want to spend money they didn't have. Christine agreed. Every dollar mattered. After returning home, they focused on building the future they had promised each other. Donald continued searching for older properties that could be renovated and sold. The profits were small at first. Sometimes there weren't any profits at all. Unexpected repairs often erased months of hard work. More than once, Donald wondered if the business would survive. Whenever discouragement appeared, Christine reminded him why they had started. "We're building something that will last." Donald nodded. "So, we keep going." They did. Donald spent his days visiting construction sites, meeting contractors, and searching for the next opportunity. Christine finished her work at the accounting firm each afternoon before driving to their small office. The office contained 2 desks, 1 filing cabinet, an aging printer, and little else. That didn't matter. Together, they turned that small room into the foundation of Corin Residential Investments. Christine organized every financial record. She created budgets, prepared payroll, reviewed contracts before Donald signed them, managed invoices, prepared tax documents, answered investor questions, produced monthly financial reports. She often stayed there until nearly midnight balancing company accounts before returning to her regular job the next morning. Donald never treated her work as invisible. Whenever investors praised him, he corrected them. "My wife deserves as much credit as I do." He meant every word. As the years passed, their company slowly earned a strong reputation. Banks appreciated their accurate financial reporting. Investors noticed that every question received a clear answer. Contractors liked working with a company that paid invoices on time. Employees respected Donald because he worked beside them instead of giving orders from a distance. They respected Christine because every paycheck arrived correctly and every problem was handled fairly. Trust became the company's greatest strength. One successful renovation became 3. 3 became 7. Soon they were purchasing apartment buildings instead of single homes. Donald became known throughout Denver as an ambitious real estate developer. His photograph occasionally appeared in local business magazines. People recognized him at networking events. Christine rarely appeared in those articles. She preferred staying behind the scenes. That never bothered her. She wasn't interested in recognition. She cared about seeing the business succeed. One evening, they sat together inside their office after finishing another long day. Donald reviewed the latest financial report. He looked across the desk at Christine. "Do you realize we've doubled our revenue again?" Christine smiled. "We also doubled our responsibilities." Donald laughed. "You always keep me grounded." "Someone has to." He leaned back in his chair. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." Christine reached across the desk and squeezed his hand. "We built it together." Donald nodded. Together. That single word became the foundation of both their marriage and their business. Neither believed success belonged to one person. Every achievement belonged to both of them. As Corin Residential Investments continued growing, so did another dream. Every time they passed a playground, Christine smiled at the children running across the grass. Donald noticed. "You still thinking about it?" She nodded. "I've always wanted a family." Donald smiled. "So have I." They believed the hardest years were behind them. Their marriage was strong. Their business was growing. Their future looked brighter than ever. Neither of them knew their next dream would become the greatest test either of them had ever faced. As Corin Residential Investments continued growing, Donald and Christine decided it was finally time to focus on the dream they had talked about since they first met. They wanted a child. They believed it would happen quickly. It didn't. 1 month passed, then another. Each time Christine bought a pregnancy test, she hoped this one would finally bring good news. Each time the answer was the same. Donald always found her trying to smile through the disappointment. He wrapped his arms around her and reminded her they were in this together. "We're not giving up." Christine nodded. "We'll keep trying." Months turned into years. Doctor appointments became part of their routine. Medical tests filled their calendars. Specialists recommended treatments. They followed every instruction. Family members tried to encourage them without asking too many questions. Friends announced pregnancies while Christine quietly congratulated them, then cried after returning home. Donald stayed beside her through every disappointment. Whenever Christine blamed herself, he immediately stopped her. "This isn't your fault." "We'll have our time." She believed him. Then, one evening, everything changed. Donald came home after another long day at work. The house was unusually quiet. "Christine?" No answer. He walked toward the dining room. A small wrapped box sat in the center of the table. Beside it was a handwritten note. "Open me." Donald smiled. He lifted the lid. Inside rested a tiny pair of baby shoes. For several seconds, he couldn't move. He looked toward the hallway. Christine stood there smiling through happy tears. Donald looked back at the little shoes, then at his wife. "Are you serious?" Christine nodded. "We're going to be parents." Donald crossed the room in seconds and hugged her tightly. Neither of them spoke. Neither needed to. Years of waiting had finally ended. The following months became the happiest period of their marriage. Donald reduced unnecessary travel. He left work earlier whenever possible. Christine began preparing the nursery. They argued playfully over baby names. They attended childbirth classes together. Every Friday they took another photograph to remember the pregnancy. Christine even started writing letters to their unborn baby inside a journal. She planned to give it to their child years later. For the first time in a long time, their home felt complete. Then winter arrived. Heavy snow covered Denver for several days. Road crews worked constantly, but many streets remained dangerous. One afternoon, Donald called Christine from his truck while driving between meetings. His voice sounded rushed. "I need a favor." "What happened?" "One of our investors needs signed documents before tomorrow morning." "Can't it wait?" "I've already promised them." Christine looked outside at the falling snow. "I can take them." You don't have to. We've always helped each other. Donald thanked her. I'll make it up to you tonight. She smiled. You already have. She gathered the paperwork, put on her coat, and carefully drove toward the meeting. Traffic moved slowly. Everyone understood the roads were slippery. Christine stayed below the speed limit. She kept both hands on the steering wheel. As she entered an intersection with a green light, another driver approached from the cross street. The driver pressed the brakes. The vehicle didn't stop. It slid across the icy pavement. Christine saw the headlights only a second before impact. The crash echoed across the intersection. Metal twisted. Glass shattered. Airbags exploded. People nearby immediately called 911. Firefighters worked quickly to reach Christine inside the damaged vehicle. She was still breathing. They rushed her to the hospital. Donald received the phone call while walking into another meeting. Everything around him disappeared. He drove straight to the hospital. When he reached the emergency department, doctors were already treating Christine. Minutes felt like hours. Finally, a physician walked toward him. Donald immediately stood. How's my wife? She's alive. Donald closed his eyes with relief. The doctor continued. I'm very sorry. We couldn't save the baby. Donald felt his knees weaken. He leaned against the wall to keep from falling. Nothing prepared either of them for the days that followed. Christine required surgery. Physical recovery took weeks. Emotional recovery seemed impossible. Family filled the waiting room. Friends brought meals to the house. Neighbors quietly helped without asking for anything in return. The nursery door stayed closed. The tiny baby shoes remained exactly where Donald had left them. Christine couldn't bear to move them. Neither could Donald. The funeral was small. No parent should ever have to bury a child they never had the chance to hold. Christine cried openly. Donald stood beside her, trying to remain strong. Everyone believed they would heal together. Instead, grief pushed them in different directions. Christine wanted to talk about their loss. She wanted counseling. She wanted them to face the pain together. Donald believed working harder would help him survive. He stayed longer at the office, accepted more meetings, looked for new projects, anything that kept his mind occupied. Christine watched the distance between them grow a little more every week. One evening, she finally asked him, "Will you come to counseling with me?" Donald looked down at the paperwork in his hands. "I don't think talking about it will change anything. It won't change what happened. It might help us." Donald slowly shook his head. "I just need more time." Christine didn't argue. She simply nodded. But she walked away, feeling more alone than she had since the day of the accident. She believed time would eventually bring them back together. Donald believed success would help him forget. Neither realized they were choosing different paths. That quiet separation became the first crack in a marriage that had once seemed unbreakable. Neither of them knew another woman would eventually step into that space. Neither imagined that the business they built together would one day become the very thing that tore them apart. The months after losing their baby changed the rhythm of Donald and Christine's marriage. They still lived under the same roof. They still shared meals. Donald still kissed Christine before leaving for work every morning. Christine still waited for him every evening. From the outside, nothing looked different. Inside the house, everything had changed. The laughter that once filled their evenings disappeared. Conversations became shorter. Some nights they finished dinner without saying more than a few sentences. Christine believed they were grieving in different ways. She refused to pressure Donald. She believed love meant giving each other time. Donald believed keeping busy was the only way to survive. Every new project became another reason to stay away from home. Several months later, Corin Residential Investments received an opportunity Donald had been chasing for years. A group of investors wanted to expand into commercial properties in Las Vegas. The proposal could double the company's growth. Donald studied every detail before bringing it home. He spread the documents across the dining room table. Christine reviewed them carefully. "This is a big step." Donald nodded. "If this works, we'll have opportunities we never imagined." Christine smiled. "You've worked for this for years. It means more travel. I know. You'll be okay with that?" Christine reached across the table and held his hand. "If this helps our future, We'll make it work." Donald squeezed her hand. "Thank you." A week later, he boarded his first flight to Las Vegas. The meetings went well. Developers welcomed the partnership. Investors showed interest. Donald returned home excited. For the first time since the accident, Christine saw genuine energy in his face. She felt relieved. She believed work was helping him heal. She thanked God for giving her husband a reason to smile again. Neither of them realized that the same trips bringing Donald new business would also bring the greatest mistake of his life. As the months passed, Donald traveled every other weekend. He called Christine every evening. He sent photographs from conference rooms, construction sites, business dinners. Everything looked professional. Christine never questioned him. She trusted the man she married. During one investor reception inside a large hotel on the Las Vegas Strip, Donald met Jacqueline Hendy. She worked as a marketing executive for one of the city's major casinos. Her job required her to organize events for business clients and visiting investors. She greeted guests with confidence and knew almost everyone in the room. Donald introduced himself. "I'm Donald Corrin." "Jacqueline Hendy." They shook hands. Their first conversation lasted only a few minutes. They spoke about commercial development, tourism, and the rapid growth of Las Vegas. Before leaving, they exchanged business cards. Donald thought nothing more about it. 2 weeks later, he returned for another round of meetings. His phone rang during lunch. The caller introduced herself. "Donald, this is Jacqueline." He smiled. "I wasn't expecting your call. I wanted to see if your company needed help arranging client events while you're in town." "Actually, we might." They agreed to meet that afternoon. The meeting began with business. They discussed conference venues, hotel accommodations, corporate events. As the afternoon continued, the conversation became more personal. Jacqueline asked if he enjoyed living in Colorado. Donald smiled. "I do. Do you have family there?" He hesitated. Then he answered, "I do." She smiled. "That must make traveling difficult." Donald looked away for a moment. "My personal life is complicated." Jacqueline didn't ask another question. She respected his privacy. Donald could have ended the conversation there. He could have simply said he was married. He could have told the truth. Instead, he made the decision that changed everything. "My marriage has been over for a long time." The words came easily. He surprised himself with how quickly he said them. Jacqueline looked sympathetic. "I'm sorry." Donald nodded. "We've been living separate lives." That wasn't true. Their marriage was struggling. It wasn't over. Jacqueline believed every word. She had no reason not to. Donald wasn't wearing his wedding ring. He had removed it before arriving for the conference because he claimed it attracted unnecessary questions during business meetings. Now that choice made his lie easier to believe. Over the next several trips, Donald and Jacqueline met again. Sometimes they shared lunch after meetings. Other times, they had dinner after investor events. Their conversations became longer. Donald talked about business. Jacqueline talked about her career. She admired his ambition. Donald enjoyed the attention he received whenever he was with her. For a few hours each weekend, he forgot the grief waiting for him back home. He convinced himself he deserved a chance to feel happy again. Every lie became easier after the first one. When Jacqueline asked why his divorce wasn't finished, Donald already had another answer waiting. "There are financial issues." She nodded. "I understand. The lawyers are handling everything." She believed him. Donald told himself he wasn't hurting anyone. He believed he could manage both lives until everything settled down. He never stopped to consider that every new lie moved him farther away from the woman who had stood beside him when he had nothing. Back in Denver, Christine carefully packed Donald's suitcase before every trip. She reminded him not to forget his medication. She slipped handwritten notes into his luggage, wishing him good luck. Every time she drove him to the airport, she kissed him goodbye and told him to travel safely. Donald kissed her back. Then he boarded another flight to Las Vegas, carrying 2 different lives in the same suitcase. By the time each plane landed, Donald was no longer simply traveling for business. He was traveling toward a future built on deception, while Christine remained in Denver believing every mile he traveled was another sacrifice he was making for the family they still hoped to rebuild. Donald returned to Denver after every Las Vegas trip looking like a man whose life was finally improving. Christine noticed the change immediately. "You seem happier." Donald smiled. "I think the expansion is finally coming together." Christine felt relieved. She believed the business was giving him purpose again. She never imagined someone else had become part of that change. As the Las Vegas projects continued growing, Donald's trips became more frequent. A 2-day visit became 3. 3 days became 4. Soon he was spending almost every other weekend in Nevada. Whenever Christine asked about the longer trips, Donald always had an explanation. The investors added another meeting. The contractors changed the schedule. The lenders want another presentation. Christine accepted every answer. She had always trusted him. She never searched his phone. She never questioned his loyalty. She believed marriage could not survive without trust. Meanwhile, Donald's relationship with Jacqueline became more personal. They stopped meeting only during business events. They had dinner after meetings, walked through shopping districts, spent hours talking about their plans. Jacqueline believed Donald was building a new future after the end of a difficult marriage. Donald allowed her to believe it. Every visit became easier than the one before. He smiled more in Las Vegas than he did at home. Before long, hotel rooms no longer felt convenient. Donald rented a luxury condominium only a few minutes from the Las Vegas Strip. Officially, it was executive housing for business travel. That was the explanation he entered into company records. In reality, it became the place where he and Jacqueline spent nearly every weekend together. He furnished it with expensive furniture. He installed high-end appliances. He decorated the walls with modern artwork. Every payment came from company accounts. Each expense carried a different business description: executive housing, client development, corporate hospitality, business expansion. Anyone reviewing the reports would believe the spending supported company growth. Donald approved every payment himself. No one questioned the owner of the company. The spending didn't stop there. Donald bought Jacqueline expensive jewelry, designer handbags, concert tickets, weekend spa packages, fine dining. Every purchase disappeared into company bookkeeping under another project name. He promised himself he would repay the business later. He never did. Each month, the spending increased. Each month, another false entry appeared in the accounting system. Back in Denver, Christine continued doing what she had always done. She managed payroll, prepared financial reports, answered investor emails, reviewed budgets. She trusted the numbers because she trusted the man approving them. Whenever Donald called from Las Vegas, she asked the same question: "How are the meetings going?" "They're productive." "Are you getting enough rest?" "I will after this project is finished." "I miss you." "I miss you too." Donald ended every call the same way: "I'll be home soon." Christine smiled every time she heard those words. She counted the days until his return. She believed every trip brought them closer to rebuilding the future they had planned before losing their baby. Donald never corrected that belief. Jacqueline also began making plans for the future. One evening, they stood on the balcony of the condominium overlooking the lights of Las Vegas. She smiled. "It'll be nice when all of this is behind us." Donald looked at her. "What do you mean?" "Your divorce." Donald answered without hesitation. "It won't take much longer." She nodded. "I've never asked you to rush." "I know. I just want us to stop living between two different places." Donald forced a smile. "We will." He knew he wasn't telling the truth. The divorce he kept describing didn't exist. Every promise he made pushed him deeper into a life he could no longer control. Back in Denver, Christine noticed something else. Donald no longer wanted to spend weekends at home. Whenever he returned from Las Vegas, another meeting appeared on his schedule. Another property inspection, another investor dinner, another business obligation. She quietly accepted it. She believed success demanded sacrifice. Friends occasionally asked if the constant travel bothered her. Christine always defended her husband. "He's doing this for both of us." She believed every word. Donald also began changing small habits without realizing it. He stopped leaving receipts on the kitchen counter. He opened new credit cards. He handled more financial approvals personally instead of asking Christine to review them. When she offered to help with certain reports, he smiled politely. "I've already taken care of them." Christine appreciated that he was trying to reduce her workload. She didn't realize he was slowly moving financial decisions away from her. Donald convinced himself he was protecting both of them. If Christine never saw the transactions, she would never ask questions. If nobody asked questions, everything could continue. He believed he had complete control. He was wrong. Every hidden payment, every false expense, every company dollar used to support his second life was quietly creating records that could not be erased. Donald didn't know it yet. The same accounting system Christine had helped build years earlier was preserving every decision he believed no one would ever discover. Months passed, and Donald believed he had everything under control. His business continued growing. His trips to Las Vegas became routine. Christine still trusted him. Jacqueline still believed he was waiting for his divorce to become final. Donald convinced himself both lives could continue without colliding. He was wrong. The first problem appeared through something so small that Donald never noticed it. One Saturday afternoon, Christine sat in the company office reviewing travel reimbursements before preparing the quarterly financial report. She wasn't searching for anything unusual. She simply wanted every report completed before Monday morning. While matching airline confirmations with travel expenses, one email caught her attention. Donald had told her he left for Las Vegas on Thursday morning. The airline receipt showed his flight had departed Friday. Christine frowned. She looked at the calendar again. Maybe the meeting had been postponed. She closed the file and continued working. She didn't think about it again. A week later, another small detail appeared. Donald submitted reimbursement forms for business dinners. Christine compared them with the company calendar. The dates didn't match any scheduled investor meetings. She looked through her email. Nothing. No conference. No presentation. No company event. She quietly corrected another report and moved on. Everyone made paperwork mistakes. She refused to become suspicious over small details. Trust still mattered more to her than doubt. Several days later, Christine stopped at the mailbox after returning from work. Their next-door neighbor greeted her with a smile. "Hi, Christine." "Hi. Did Donald enjoy his trip?" Christine answered without thinking. "He's still in Las Vegas." The neighbor looked surprised. "Oh, I probably made a mistake." "What do you mean?" "I thought I saw him yesterday morning at Denver International Airport." Christine smiled politely. It was probably someone who looked like him. "You're probably right." The conversation ended. Christine walked inside carrying the mail. She told herself airports were crowded. People often looked alike. She wasn't going to accuse her husband because of one mistaken observation. She placed the mail on the kitchen counter and forgot about it. Donald continued traveling. Every visit to Las Vegas became easier. Every return to Denver required another explanation. He also became more protective of his phone. When it rang, he stepped outside before answering. He changed every password. He bought a second phone and explained it was only for business contacts in Nevada. Christine believed him. A growing company often required separate business communication. She accepted the explanation without another question. One evening, Donald returned from another trip, looking exhausted. After dinner, he fell asleep on the living room couch while watching television. His second phone vibrated on the coffee table. Christine reached toward it. She wasn't trying to read his messages. She only wanted to silence the notification. Before the screen locked, one message appeared. "Miss you already. Can't wait until next weekend." There was no name, only a phone number. Christine slowly placed the phone exactly where she had found it. She sat quietly on the opposite side of the room. Her heart felt heavier than it had in months. She searched for another explanation. Maybe the message had been sent to the wrong number. Maybe it belonged to a client. Maybe there was something she didn't understand. She wanted every explanation except the obvious one. The following morning, she said nothing. Donald left for work as usual. Christine watched him drive away before closing the front door. For the first time since their baby's funeral, she cried without anyone beside her. Not because she knew the truth, because she feared she was getting closer to it. Even then, she still chose trust. She refused to search through Donald's belongings. She refused to follow him. She refused to accuse him without proof. A few days later, another conversation changed everything. One of the company's longtime property managers asked Christine if she had a few minutes. She agreed. They met at a small coffee shop near the office. He looked uncomfortable. "I hope you don't take this the wrong way." Christine smiled. "You can speak freely." He lowered his voice. "I've been reviewing several expense reports." She listened carefully. "Some of the travel expenses don't match the projects I supervise." Christine remained calm. "I assumed there was a reason." "So did I." He slid a folded sheet of paper across the table. "I thought you should see these account numbers." Christine opened it. The paper listed several expense categories connected to Donald's travel. Nothing more. No accusations, no opinions, only information. The property manager looked directly at her. "I respect both of you. I'm not saying anyone has done anything wrong, but if I were responsible for company finances—" He paused only long enough to finish his sentence. "I would review every transaction myself." Christine folded the paper and placed it inside her notebook. "Thank you. I appreciate your honesty." She drove back to the office without turning on the radio. For the first time, her concern wasn't focused on another woman. It was focused on the company she had helped build from the ground up. If the financial records didn't match the business activities, the problem could be much larger than a marriage. Christine unlocked her office, sat at her desk, and looked toward the accounting system she had designed years earlier. She didn't open it. Not yet. She knew one decision would change everything. If she started looking, she had to be prepared to accept whatever the records revealed. That evening, she closed the office, drove home, and prepared dinner before Donald returned from another business meeting. She smiled when he walked through the door. He smiled back. Neither of them said a word about the questions that had quietly entered their marriage. Donald believed his secrets were still safe. Christine decided that before asking her husband a single question, she would ask the numbers first. She trusted numbers. Numbers told the truth. The morning after meeting with the property manager, Christine arrived at the office earlier than usual. The building was still quiet. Most employees would not arrive for another hour. She unlocked her office, placed her coffee beside the computer, and turned on the accounting system she had created years earlier. She wasn't looking for proof of an affair. She was looking for answers. If Donald had done nothing wrong, the records would clear his name. If something was hidden, the records would reveal it. Christine began with the travel expenses connected to Las Vegas. She compared flight schedules with reimbursement requests. Then she compared hotel invoices with company calendars. Several business trips matched legitimate meetings. Several did not. Some weekends showed luxury hotel bills, even though no conferences, investor presentations, or project inspections had been scheduled. She printed the reports and placed them in a folder. Then she continued. She reviewed company credit card statements. Restaurant charges appeared repeatedly. Many listed meals for 2 people. Each expense had been approved by Donald. She moved to another report. Vehicle rentals, private parking, entertainment expenses. Most carried business descriptions. Very few included supporting documents. Christine frowned. Donald had always insisted that every expense receive complete documentation. Now he was approving payments without following the same rules. She opened another section of the accounting system. Vendor payments. Nothing unusual. Payroll. Everything matched. Property taxes. Also correct. Then something caught her attention. 3 companies appeared in recent financial records. She had never seen their names before. Each company had received regular payments from Corin Residential Investments. Christine searched the corporate files. No project agreements, no construction contracts, no consulting reports. Nothing explained why they existed. She opened the payment history. Monthly transfers, some for $20,000, others for $40,000. A few exceeded $50,000. Each payment used professional-sounding descriptions: executive development, strategic expansion, business consulting. The wording sounded legitimate. The supporting documents were almost empty. Christine printed every page. Her desk slowly filled with paperwork. She refused to make assumptions. Every document had to support the next one. Next, she compared Donald's travel calendar with the company expense reports. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Business meetings often lasted only a few hours. The hotel reservations continued for several days afterward. Restaurant charges appeared after scheduled events had already ended. Luxury purchases appeared during weekends when no company business existed. Christine leaned back in her chair. She wasn't guessing anymore. The records were beginning to tell their own story. She continued reviewing electronic approvals. Almost every questionable transaction carried Donald's authorization. No employee had approved the spending. Donald had approved himself. She opened another folder. Corporate housing. One address appeared again and again. Las Vegas. Monthly payments. Utility bills. Furniture purchases. Appliance deliveries. The property had never appeared in board discussions. Donald had never mentioned buying executive housing. Christine searched company property records. Nothing. The condominium wasn't listed as a company investment, yet company money continued paying its expenses. She quietly added another stack of documents to the growing pile. Hours passed. She barely noticed. By late afternoon, her office desk was covered with organized folders. Travel, housing, credit cards, expense reimbursements, corporate transfers. Every category revealed another problem. Christine closed her eyes for only a moment. She wasn't thinking about money. She was thinking about trust. Every report represented another decision Donald had hidden from her. Every transaction reminded her that the man she married had slowly stopped sharing the truth. Still, she refused to accuse him. Not yet. She wanted facts, nothing else. Before leaving the office, she printed one final report. It summarized every questionable transfer connected to the Las Vegas expansion. The total stunned her. The amount reached hundreds of thousands of dollars. She placed the report inside a new folder and locked it in her desk drawer. Then she turned off her computer. When Donald arrived home that evening, Christine greeted him exactly as she always had. She asked about his day. He asked about hers. They ate dinner together. Donald spoke about another upcoming trip to Las Vegas. Christine listened quietly. She never mentioned the reports. She never mentioned the hidden companies. She never mentioned the condominium. She already understood something important. If Donald had hidden this much from her, confronting him too early would only give him time to hide even more. She finished dinner, cleared the table, and looked across at the man she had loved for nearly 10 years. Donald believed his secrets were still protected. Christine knew the truth was only beginning to appear. The next morning, Christine returned to the office carrying the folders she had organized the night before. She didn't open them immediately. She looked at the company logo on the wall. Years earlier, she and Donald had built that business from a single desk and a borrowed printer. Now the same business held evidence that could destroy their marriage. Christine made one decision. She would not confront Donald, not yet. If he knew she had started investigating, he could move money, delete records, or change company files. She needed the truth before she asked a single question. That afternoon, she called Miles Farrow. "Can we meet today?" "Of course. I need your advice." 2 hours later, Christine sat inside Miles's office. She placed the first folder on his desk. Then another, then another. Miles looked at the growing stack. "That's a lot of paperwork." "I wanted facts." "You did the right thing." Miles opened the first folder. He carefully reviewed travel records, expense reports, credit card statements, corporate transfers. He spent nearly an hour reading without interruption. Finally, he closed the last folder. "This is bigger than an affair." Christine remained quiet. Miles continued. "If these records are accurate, company money and marital assets may have been used for personal purposes." Christine nodded. "I believe that's exactly what's happened." Miles leaned forward. "I don't want assumptions. I want proof that will stand in court." "So do I." "There is one more step." "What is it?" "We need a forensic accountant." Christine agreed immediately. "I'll do whatever is necessary." Within days, Miles arranged a confidential meeting. The forensic accountant began reviewing every document Christine had collected. Nothing was rushed. Every transaction had to be verified. Every transfer had to be traced. Every expense needed supporting records. For weeks, Christine continued going to work as though nothing had changed. Donald never suspected anything. He continued traveling to Las Vegas. He continued approving company expenses. He continued believing nobody was looking closely. Each weekend added more records. Each business trip created another paper trail. Meanwhile, the forensic review continued. Travel expenses matched airline records. Hotel invoices matched bank statements. Corporate credit card charges matched luxury purchases. Wire transfers matched company accounts. Nothing depended on guesswork. Everything depended on documents. A few weeks later, Miles invited Christine back to his office. The forensic report was ready. It filled hundreds of pages. Miles opened the report. The evidence confirms repeated transfers connected to Donald's travel. He turned another page. Company funds paid for housing in Las Vegas. Another page. Luxury purchases were recorded as business expenses. Another. Several companies receiving payments appear to exist only on paper. Christine listened without interrupting. Every answer hurt, not because she didn't expect it, because every page confirmed the man she trusted had lied for years. Miles closed the report. This didn't happen by accident. It required planning. Christine lowered her eyes. She remembered the nights Donald promised he was working late for the company. The weekends he said investors needed him. The mornings she packed his suitcase and wished him safe travels. She had believed every word. Miles spoke again. "There's something else." He handed her another folder. Christine opened it. Inside were updated corporate documents. She immediately recognized Donald's signature. She continued reading. Her expression changed. Months earlier, while she struggled to recover after losing their baby, Donald had quietly changed several company approval procedures. Major financial decisions no longer required Christine's authorization. Certain banking communications no longer included her. Several executive approvals belonged only to Donald. Christine looked up. "I never signed these changes." Miles nodded. "You didn't have to." He filed them under his executive authority. Christine turned another page. Banks had received letters stating she had voluntarily reduced her role inside the company to focus on personal recovery. She slowly closed the folder. "That isn't true." "I know. He used my grief." Miles didn't answer. He didn't need to. The documents already had. Christine took a deep breath and gathered herself. She wasn't angry. She was determined. "I want to protect what's left." "You can." "How?" Miles answered without hesitation. "We prepare everything before Donald knows. No confrontation, no warning, no arguments, only evidence." Christine nodded. "I agree." Over the next several weeks, they worked carefully. Every bank statement was organized. Every property record was copied. Every expense report was matched to supporting documents. Every airline ticket, hotel invoice, reimbursement, and transfer was placed into chronological order. The evidence became impossible to dispute. Donald continued living exactly as before. He flew to Las Vegas. He met Jacqueline. He approved more expenses. He believed another ordinary weekend had passed. He never realized every decision was strengthening the legal case against him. One evening, Christine returned home before Donald. She placed the final binder inside her home office cabinet. She locked the drawer. For months, she had wanted answers. Now, she had them. The affair was real. The financial deception was real. The misuse of company money was real. She no longer needed more proof. She needed the law to protect everything Donald hadn't already taken. Miles called the following morning. "We're ready." Christine answered calmly. "Then let's finish this the right way." The morning after Miles told her they were ready, Christine gave her approval. "File it." Miles nodded. "We'll move today." His legal team worked quickly. The divorce petition was completed. Every financial record was attached. Travel reports, corporate expense statements, bank transfers, property records, credit card summaries, the forensic accounting report. Everything was organized in the exact order it had happened. Nothing relied on accusations. Every page relied on evidence. Later that afternoon, Miles appeared before a Denver judge. He explained that Donald controlled the company accounts. He showed how money had moved through multiple companies. He demonstrated how marital assets continued paying for expenses unrelated to the business. His concern was simple. If these assets aren't protected immediately, additional money could disappear before the court reviews the case. The judge carefully reviewed the evidence. Several minutes later, the ruling was signed. Emergency financial protection was granted. The orders went out immediately. Banks received electronic notices. Investment firms received legal instructions. Title companies were notified. Corporate accounts entered temporary restriction. Major withdrawals required court approval. Property transfers stopped. Large financial transactions were frozen. Everything happened before Donald boarded his return flight from Las Vegas. At that moment, he sat inside a restaurant with Jacqueline. She smiled across the table. "I've been thinking." Donald looked up. "About what?" "When your divorce is finally over." He forced a smile. "What about it?" "We should take a vacation." "I'd like that. Maybe somewhere quiet." Donald nodded. "We'll make it happen." He raised his glass. "To new beginnings." Jacqueline smiled and raised hers. Neither of them knew that, hundreds of miles away, Donald's entire financial world had already changed. The next morning, Donald landed in Denver. He collected his suitcase and started the drive home. Halfway there, he stopped for fuel. He inserted his company credit card. The machine rejected it. He frowned. He tried again. Declined. He reached for another company card. Declined. "This can't be right," he said quietly. He paid with cash and returned to his vehicle. Before he reached the highway, his phone rang. It was his financial advisor. "Donald, where are you?" "Driving home." "We have a serious problem." "What happened?" "Several accounts have been restricted." "What are you talking about?" "I've never seen anything like this." Donald gripped the steering wheel. "There has to be a mistake." "I don't think so." "You need to contact your attorney immediately." The call ended. Another phone call arrived. One of his lenders. "Donald, today's property closing has been suspended." "Why?" "We received court instructions." "What court instructions?" "I can't discuss them." The lender ended the call. Donald pressed harder on the accelerator. His phone continued ringing. His assistant, an investor, another lender. Every conversation sounded the same. Nobody could explain why. Everybody wanted answers. Donald finally pulled into his driveway. He rushed inside. The house was quiet. Christine sat at the dining room table. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. A large envelope rested in front of her. Donald looked from the envelope to Christine. "What happened?" Christine met his eyes. "I think you already know." She gently pushed the envelope across the table. Donald picked it up. His hands were steady. His breathing wasn't. He opened it. The first page carried the seal of the court. Divorce petition. He turned another page. Emergency financial injunction. Another page. Temporary asset preservation order. Another. Asset restriction notice. He looked at Christine. "You filed for divorce?" "Yes." "You froze our accounts?" "I asked the court to protect our assets." Donald threw the papers onto the table. "This is insane." Christine remained calm. "No. This became necessary." Donald shook his head. "You should have talked to me." "I tried." "You never asked." "I asked many times." Donald opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Christine reached beside her chair and placed another folder on the table. "Look inside." Donald slowly opened it. The first pages contained airline records, then hotel invoices, restaurant bills, luxury purchases, corporate reimbursements, wire transfers, payments connected to the Las Vegas condominium, transfers involving the companies he believed no one would ever examine. Donald turned page after page. His confidence disappeared. Every document matched his own records. Every approval carried his signature. Every payment led back to him. He stopped turning the pages. Christine finally spoke. "I spent years helping you build this company." Donald stared at the table. "I trusted you with my future." Another page slid across the table. "You used our business to pay for another life." Donald whispered, "Christine." she continued. I stood beside you when we had almost nothing. I believed every business trip. I defended you. I believed every explanation. Donald looked at her. I can explain. Christine slowly shook her head. The documents already did. The room fell silent for only a brief moment before she asked the one question that had stayed with her through months of investigation. How long were you planning to let me finance your new life? Donald searched for an answer. None came. For the first time since the affair began, he understood this was no longer a private problem between husband and wife. The evidence was in court. The accounts were frozen. The truth was documented. His fortune had disappeared overnight, and there was nothing he could do to stop what came next. Donald barely slept after Christine handed him the divorce papers. Before sunrise, he was already making phone calls. First, his attorney, then his financial advisor, then his largest lender. Every answer sounded the same. The court order is active. The restrictions remain in place. We have to wait. Donald couldn't believe it. For years, one phone call had solved every business problem. This time, nobody could help him. He arrived at Corin Residential Investments earlier than anyone else. He expected another normal workday. Instead, he walked into a building that felt completely different. Employees greeted him politely, but nobody smiled. Small conversations stopped as he passed. People looked at their computers instead of looking at him. The rumors had already spread. Nobody knew every detail. Everyone knew something serious had happened. Donald walked straight into the conference room and called an emergency management meeting. Within minutes, department heads filled the room. Donald stood at the front. I know many of you have heard rumors. Nobody interrupted. This is a private family matter. The room stayed quiet. Our company will continue operating. Again, nobody spoke. Donald noticed the lack of confidence on every face. For years, employees trusted every decision he made. Now they were waiting for proof instead of promises. The meeting ended without a single question. That silence troubled Donald more than an argument would have. As people returned to work, his phone rang again. It was his attorney. We need to meet. Donald closed his office door. What now? The divorce isn't the biggest issue anymore. Donald frowned. What are you talking about? The financial records. What about them? If the court accepts the evidence, investors will demand explanations. I can explain the expenses. You'll need documents. I have documents. Not the kind the court will ask for. Donald leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he realized he couldn't simply talk his way through the problem. Every payment, every transfer, every approval carried his own signature. His attorney continued, The evidence is stronger than you think. The call ended. Less than an hour later, Donald received another request. The board wanted an emergency review of company finances. He entered the boardroom expecting support. Instead, several binders sat on the conference table. Each contained company records, expense reports, approval logs, travel reimbursements. Board members had already started reading them. Donald remained standing. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, I'd like the chance to explain. Nobody objected. One board member opened the first binder. This reimbursement. Donald looked down. I approved it. Another page. This executive housing expense. Donald answered quietly. Yes. Another page. This travel authorization. Again. Yes. The questions continued. Every answer led back to Donald. No employee had approved the spending. No board member had authorized it. Donald had approved nearly everything himself. The room became heavier with every page. Nobody shouted. Nobody accused him. They simply kept reading. That worried Donald more than anger ever could. The documents were speaking for themselves. Meanwhile, Christine continued following Miles's advice. She made no public statements. She refused every invitation to discuss the divorce. She didn't defend herself. She didn't attack Donald. Every morning, she arrived at work. Every afternoon, she answered questions from her legal team. Every evening, she returned home. She believed the evidence was enough. She had no interest in winning public sympathy. She only wanted the truth protected. As the internal review continued, more employees quietly submitted records they had saved over the years. Email approvals, expense corrections, accounting notes, payment requests. Each document confirmed another part of the financial history. Nothing had been created after the lawsuit. Everything already existed inside company records. Donald finally understood something he had never considered. He had spent years believing he controlled the company. He never realized the company had been recording every decision he made. By the end of the week, investors began calling, not to discuss new projects, not to purchase more properties. They wanted one thing: answers. Donald looked across his office at the framed photographs celebrating years of business success, awards, certificates, groundbreaking ceremonies. They had once represented everything he had built. Now, none of them mattered. People were no longer asking how successful he was. They were asking whether they could trust him. Donald finally understood that money could replace almost anything. Trust could not. While Donald struggled to save his company, another part of his life was beginning to collapse. Jacqueline noticed the change immediately. Donald stopped calling as often. He canceled dinner plans. He shortened every conversation. Whenever she asked what was wrong, he gave the same answer: business has become complicated. At first, she believed him. She knew large business deals could become stressful. She decided to give him space. Several days later, Donald missed another planned visit to Las Vegas. He apologized. "I can't leave Denver right now." "Is everything okay?" "I'm dealing with legal issues." "What kind of legal issues?" "Business issues." Jacqueline accepted the explanation, but something no longer felt right. Donald had always answered her questions. Now every answer was short. Every conversation ended quickly. One afternoon, while waiting for Donald to return her call, Jacqueline searched online for news about Corin Residential Investments. She expected to find business articles. Instead, she found public court records connected to Donald's divorce. She stared at the screen. Her eyes moved slowly across the first page. Petitioner, Christine Wilson Corin. She kept reading. Donald wasn't divorced. He wasn't separated. He was still married. Her hands began to shake. Every promise he had made suddenly meant something different. She picked up her phone and called him. Donald answered immediately. "Hi." Jacqueline didn't waste a second. "Are you still married?" Donald went silent. "Answer me." "Yes." "You told me your marriage had already ended." "It's complicated." "No, it isn't. You lied." Donald tried to explain. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "I just needed more time." "You've had years." Donald spoke faster. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did. You lied about your wife. You lied about your future. You lied about us." Donald closed his eyes. "Please, let me explain." "There isn't anything left to explain." Jacqueline ended the call. She blocked his number before he could call again. She walked through her apartment, trying to understand how she had believed every word. She realized something that hurt almost as much as the lie itself. Christine had never been the other woman. Christine had always been the wife. Jacqueline had been living inside a story Donald invented. The relationship ended that day, not because Donald lost money, because he lost credibility. Back in Denver, Donald faced another difficult conversation. His parents had finally learned the truth. For months they had defended him. Whenever Christine seemed worried, they believed Donald's explanations. Whenever she mentioned the long business trips, they insisted he was working hard for his family. Now they knew everything. Donald arrived at their home carrying another folder from his attorney. His father looked at him without smiling. "Sit down." Donald obeyed. His mother placed several documents on the table. "We've read them." Donald lowered his eyes. His father spoke first. "Tell me they aren't true." Donald couldn't. His silence answered the question. His mother wiped tears from her face. "We defended you." Donald said quietly, "I know. We told Christine to be patient." "I know. We believed every word you said." Donald looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry." His father slowly shook his head. Being sorry doesn't change what you've done. His mother looked toward the window. The hardest part isn't the affair. Donald looked at her. It's knowing Christine was carrying all that pain while we kept telling her she was wrong. Donald had no answer. His father continued. She lost a baby. She stood beside you while you built your company. She trusted you, and you repaid her with lies. Donald remained silent. Every sentence was true. His parents weren't angry because he had failed in business. They were heartbroken because he had abandoned the values they taught him. Later that week, Christine met with Miles to discuss another legal issue. One of Donald's decisions had created another problem. Donald had allowed his parents to live in one of Christine's inherited rental properties. The arrangement had never been properly discussed. The property legally belonged to Christine. Miles explained the situation. You have every legal right to recover the property. Christine nodded slowly. I don't blame his parents. I know. They believed him. Miles agreed. They did. Christine spent several days thinking about the decision. She prayed. She spoke with her own parents. She thought about everything Donald's parents had done for her before the marriage fell apart. Finally, she made her choice. She followed the law. Nothing more, nothing less. The property management company issued the proper legal notice. Donald told his parents immediately. His father accepted the decision. We'll move. His mother nodded. We understand. A few weeks later, after they finished moving, Donald's parents asked Christine if they could meet. She agreed. His father looked directly at her. I owe you an apology. Christine listened quietly. I should have asked more questions. I believed my son instead of listening to you. Christine nodded. I know. His mother stepped forward with tears in her eyes. I'm sorry. I thought you were only grieving. I didn't know how much you were carrying. Christine hugged her. She wasn't trying to repair the marriage. That chapter had already ended. She simply chose compassion over bitterness. As they walked away, Donald watched from a distance. For the first time, he understood that every lie he told had hurt far more people than he ever imagined. The pressure on Corin Residential Investments grew stronger every day. The divorce was no longer the biggest concern. The company's future was. Investors wanted answers. Banks wanted explanations. Business partners wanted reassurance. Donald spent every day moving from one meeting to another. Instead of discussing new projects, he spent hours answering questions about company finances. Every conversation became more difficult. One Monday morning, the board scheduled another emergency meeting. Donald entered the room, hoping he could regain control. The atmosphere told him otherwise. The financial reports sat neatly in front of every board member. No one smiled. No one exchanged small talk. Everyone waited for the meeting to begin. Donald spoke first. I know we've been through a difficult few weeks. Nobody interrupted. I believe we can work through this. One board member looked at him. That depends on whether investors still trust this company. Donald answered quickly. They've trusted us for years. They trusted you. The words hit harder than Donald expected. Another board member opened a financial report. Our responsibility is protecting this company. Donald nodded. I understand. We've decided an independent management team will supervise company operations until the financial review is complete. Donald stared across the table. What does that mean? It means major decisions will no longer belong to you alone. Donald felt the room closing around him. The company he had built no longer trusted him to lead it. Within days, the decision became public among investors. Several immediately paused future investments. Others delayed planned projects. Some requested the return of unused investment funds. Banks also became cautious. Loan approvals slowed. Credit reviews became stricter. Projects that had seemed certain only weeks earlier stopped moving forward. Construction schedules changed. Contractors waited for answers. Donald spent more time with attorneys than with developers. Each morning brought another meeting. Each afternoon brought another problem. The business continued operating, but it no longer moved forward. It simply tried to survive. Christine watched everything from a distance. She never celebrated. She never called investors. She never spoke publicly about Donald. Whenever someone asked about the lawsuit, she answered politely, "The legal process will speak for itself." That became her only response. Miles agreed with her approach. The strongest case is the one that doesn't need public arguments. Christine followed that advice. She focused on preparing for court instead of defending herself. Meanwhile, Donald received another phone call. It came from the mentor who had supported him from the beginning of his career. The man had introduced Donald to many of the investors who helped build Corin Residential Investments. They met later that afternoon. Donald hoped for encouragement. Instead, he received honesty. His mentor looked across the table. "When I introduced you to investors, I trusted your word." Donald lowered his eyes. "I know. I believed your character matched your ambition." Donald remained silent. His mentor continued, "I can forgive business mistakes. I cannot defend dishonesty." Donald quietly answered, "I never planned for any of this." His mentor nodded. "I believe that. But every decision has consequences." Donald understood exactly what he meant. The affair had not destroyed the company overnight. The false expense reports had not destroyed it overnight. The hidden transfers had not destroyed it overnight. Years of dishonest decisions had slowly damaged the foundation beneath everything he had built. Now that foundation could no longer support the weight above it. Several weeks later, the board announced another decision. Corin Residential Investments would enter corporate restructuring while financial matters were resolved. Outside management assumed operational control. Donald remained with the company in name only. The authority he once held disappeared. Employees noticed the change immediately. Meetings no longer centered around Donald. Major decisions required outside approval. For years, Donald had been the face of the company. Now he was simply another person waiting for permission. The hardest moment came when he packed his office. He removed family photographs, business awards, framed newspaper articles, plaques celebrating successful development. Each item reminded him of a different chapter of his life. He stopped at one photograph showing himself and Christine during the early years of the company. They were standing in front of their first completed renovation. Both were smiling. Neither had much money. Both believed honesty would always guide their future. Donald stared at the photograph for a long moment before placing it inside the box. He finally understood what he had truly lost. It wasn't only the business. It wasn't only the money. It wasn't only the marriage. He had lost the trust of the people who believed in him. That was the one thing no court could return. Nearly 18 months after Christine filed for divorce, the case finally came to an end. Months of hearings, financial reviews, legal negotiations, settlement discussions. Everything reached its conclusion inside a Denver courtroom. The judge signed the final order. The marriage was officially over. Christine thanked Miles for everything he had done. He smiled. "You protected yourself the right way." Christine nodded. "I never wanted revenge." "I know. You wanted the truth." She left the courthouse without celebrating. There were no interviews, no cameras, no victory. She simply walked to her car and drove home. When she entered the house, it felt different. Not because the furniture had changed, because the uncertainty was finally gone. For the first time in years, she no longer wondered what Donald was hiding. There were no more unanswered questions, only a future waiting to be rebuilt. Christine spent the next several weeks organizing her life. She sold items she no longer needed. She updated financial records. She closed old accounts connected to the marriage. Every task marked the beginning of a new chapter. Instead of looking backward, she focused on what she could build next. Years before the divorce, Christine had quietly helped friends and neighbors with budgeting, taxes, and financial planning. Now she decided to make that work her full-time career. She rented a small office in Denver. Nothing about it looked expensive. One desk, a meeting table, a computer, several filing cabinets. She placed one sign near the entrance. Christine Wilson, Financial Consulting. Her goal wasn't to become wealthy. She wanted families to understand their finances before problems became crises. Her first clients arrived through recommendations. A retired couple needed help organizing retirement income. A young family wanted to reduce debt. A small business owner struggled with bookkeeping. Christine treated every client with the same patience she had always shown. She explained every financial decision in simple language. She encouraged people to ask questions. She reminded married couples to understand every account they owned together. Her honesty quickly became her strongest advertisement. One satisfied client recommended another, then another. Within a year, her calendar stayed full. People trusted her because she never promised easy answers. She gave practical solutions instead. Meanwhile, Donald's life looked very different. The restructuring of Corin Residential Investments left him with almost no authority. His ownership had been reduced. The company no longer depended on him. Eventually, he accepted a maintenance management position with another property company. The salary paid his bills. Nothing more. The office was smaller. The responsibilities were simpler. Nobody introduced him as a successful developer anymore. He quietly completed his work and returned home each evening. For the first time in many years, Donald lived without expensive business trips, without luxury condominiums, without private investor dinners. His life became ordinary again. Some former colleagues greeted him politely. Others crossed the street to avoid uncomfortable conversations. Donald understood why. He never blamed them. Trust had disappeared because of his own choices. One afternoon, Donald walked past a bookstore. A display window contained several books about leadership and business ethics. He stopped for a moment. Years earlier, he would have walked past without noticing. Now the titles meant something different. He realized success had once become more important than honesty. That mistake had cost him far more than money. Across town, Christine closed her office after another busy day. She smiled as she locked the front door. She wasn't thinking about the divorce anymore. She was thinking about the families she had helped that week. A young couple had finally created their first savings plan. An elderly widow now understood her finances after months of confusion. A small business owner had avoided bankruptcy because of careful budgeting. Every success reminded Christine that her experience still had value. Pain had not ended her purpose. It had redirected it. One evening, she sat on the back porch with a cup of tea as the sun disappeared behind the Denver skyline. She looked around her quiet home. Years earlier, silence reminded her of loss. Now, it reminded her of peace. She no longer carried anger. She carried wisdom. Donald had taken many things from her. He had not taken her integrity. He had not taken her ability to help others. He had not taken her future. For the first time since the marriage ended, Christine smiled without forcing it. She finally understood that moving forward did not require forgetting the past. It simply required refusing to let the past control the rest of her life. Christine's consulting business continued growing. People came for financial advice. They stayed because they felt heard. Christine never judged anyone. She understood that many families carried struggles they never talked about. One afternoon, a woman remained behind after a budgeting session. She looked nervous. "May I ask you something?" "Of course," Christine answered. "My husband manages all our money. I don't even know how much we have saved. I'm embarrassed." Christine smiled kindly. "Don't be. Asking questions about your own finances is never something to feel ashamed of." She invited the woman back into her office. For nearly an hour, Christine explained how married couples should understand their shared finances. She discussed budgeting, savings, important documents, joint responsibilities. She encouraged the woman to become involved in every financial decision. Before leaving, the woman hugged her. "You've given me confidence." Christine smiled. "I'm glad you came." After the woman left, Christine remained in her office for a few moments. She realized her own experience had become a lesson that could protect someone else's future. That thought gave new meaning to everything she had endured. Her work slowly expanded beyond financial consulting. She accepted invitations to speak at churches, neighborhood organizations, and community workshops. Her message remained simple. Money should never become a secret inside a marriage. Trust grows when both people understand their finances together. People appreciated her honesty because she spoke from experience instead of theory. Around the same time, Christine made another important decision. She wanted to help parents living with the same loss she had once carried. She contacted a nonprofit organization that supported families after pregnancy loss. She volunteered one evening each week. Her first meeting was emotional. Several couples sat together quietly. Some had experienced their loss only weeks earlier. Others had carried that pain for years. Christine introduced herself. She didn't tell them every detail of her story. She simply said, "I know what it feels like to leave a hospital with empty arms." The room became still. Every parent understood exactly what she meant. From that evening forward, Christine became a regular volunteer. Sometimes she helped organize meetings. Sometimes she welcomed new families. Most often, she simply listened. She learned that many people didn't need perfect answers. They needed someone willing to understand their pain. Each year, when the anniversary of her baby's due date arrived, Christine no longer stayed home alone. Instead, she spent the day serving other families through the nonprofit. She donated supplies, prepared meals, helped organize remembrance events. The sadness never completely disappeared, but it no longer controlled her life. Helping others gave her strength. Her consulting business also continued earning respect across Denver. Clients recommended her to friends and relatives. Small business owners trusted her advice. Young couples sought her guidance before getting married. Christine always reminded them of one important lesson. Never leave one person carrying all the financial responsibility. Marriage works best when both people understand the truth. Those simple words stayed with many of her clients. Meanwhile, Donald continued adjusting to a very different life. He worked hard at his new job. He arrived early, completed his responsibilities, returned home each evening. The work was honest. It didn't bring wealth. It brought stability. For the first time in years, Donald stopped chasing the appearance of success. He focused on becoming dependable again. His relationship with his parents slowly improved. They spent more time together. Donald helped them with repairs around their home. He no longer tried to impress anyone. He simply tried to become a better man than the one who had destroyed his marriage. One Sunday afternoon, his mother quietly asked, "Have you forgiven yourself?" Donald thought carefully before answering. "I'm learning." She nodded. "Keep learning. You can't change yesterday, but you can decide who you become tomorrow." Donald carried those words with him. Across town, Christine closed another successful week at her office. She looked around the room. The business she had built looked nothing like Corin Residential Investments. It wasn't large. It wasn't famous. It didn't need to be. People trusted it. That meant more to her than any award she had ever received. She locked the office, smiled, and walked toward her car. Years earlier, she believed losing her marriage meant losing her future. Now she understood something much greater. The hardest seasons of life can become the very experiences that prepare us to lift someone else. That lesson became the foundation of everything she did from that day forward. Several years passed. Christine's consulting business earned a strong reputation across Denver. People trusted her because she always spoke with honesty. Business owners invited her to share practical financial advice. Churches asked her to teach family budgeting. Community groups welcomed her because she explained difficult subjects in simple language. One spring morning, Christine received another invitation. The Denver Chamber of Commerce was hosting a conference for entrepreneurs and small business owners. The event focused on ethical leadership, financial responsibility, and building businesses people could trust. The organizers invited Christine to deliver the closing presentation. She accepted, not because she wanted recognition. She wanted people to avoid the mistakes that had changed her life. The auditorium filled early. Business owners, accountants, students, young entrepreneurs, families starting small companies. Everyone waited for the final speaker. Christine walked onto the stage with a simple smile. She thanked the audience for coming. Then she began. When most people think about success, they think about money. She looked across the room. "I used to believe success meant building a strong business." She paused only long enough to continue naturally. "Now I know something matters even more. Trust." The audience listened carefully. Christine continued, "You can lose money and earn it again. You can lose a business and build another one. But once people stop trusting your word, rebuilding becomes much harder." Heads nodded throughout the room. She shared practical lessons instead of personal details. She encouraged business owners to keep honest records. She reminded married couples to make financial decisions together. She urged leaders never to hide problems from the people who depended on them. Every lesson came from experience. Every word carried quiet conviction. Near the end of her speech, Christine smiled warmly. I've learned that character grows through the choices nobody else sees. The smallest dishonest decision often becomes the beginning of the biggest regret. She looked across the audience one final time. Protect your integrity. It will protect everything else. The room filled with applause. People stood to their feet, not because Christine had won a divorce, not because she had rebuilt a business. They stood because her story reminded them that success without honesty never lasts. Standing near the back of the auditorium was Donald Corrin. He had entered quietly after the presentation began. He chose a seat where few people noticed him. He listened to every word. Christine never mentioned his name. She never spoke about the affair. She never described the divorce. She didn't need to. The lesson was bigger than one marriage. Donald remained standing as the audience applauded. He looked toward the stage. Years earlier, he measured success by buildings, bank accounts, and business awards. Now he understood how incomplete that thinking had been. The greatest loss in his life had never been his fortune. It had been the trust of the woman who stood beside him when he had nothing. As people slowly left the auditorium, Donald turned toward the exit. He stopped once and looked back. Christine was speaking with several young business owners. She smiled as she answered their questions. Her face carried something he had not seen in years. Peace. Donald smiled quietly. Not because he expected another chance, not because he believed everything could be repaired. He smiled because he finally accepted the truth. Real wealth was never measured by money. It was measured by honesty. It was measured by the promises a person kept. It was measured by the trust they earned every single day. Donald walked outside into the cool Denver evening. He blended into the crowd and disappeared without saying a word. Christine never saw him leave. She didn't need to. That chapter of her life had already closed. She had found something far more valuable than the fortune she once helped build. She had found peace. Before we end today's story, thank you for spending your time with Will and Rye Stories. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, share it with someone you care about, and leave a comment about the lesson that stayed with you the most. Remember this: money can build a business. Success can build a reputation. But only honesty can build a life that lasts. When trust is protected, families grow stronger, friendships become deeper, and success gains real meaning. Christine rebuilt her future because she chose wisdom over revenge. Donald lost almost everything because he believed one hidden lie would never be discovered. In the end, both lives proved the same lesson. Character will always be worth more than fortune.
Thank you for staying with Real and Right Stories. Until next time, stay safe, my amazing family.